Hello YouTube, welcome back to the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel, and today I want to explore the subject of what is preventing open human alien contact. It is probably not what you think. We're going to talk about expanding the third dimensional mindset, and I just want to say hello to everybody who's come over here from the Jeff Mara podcast. I had a great time going on to that, a good hour of discussion with him. And you can see the link to that here in the chat. I will put it into the description of this video as well. So welcome to all of you. People have complained about my Huar mantra in the background, so I haven't decided if I'll keep that in or not, but I'm going to take it out for now just so that it doesn't annoy me that I'm annoyed by that. But we cannot avoid the extraterrestrial question any longer. We can't do it. It has now gotten to the point, and it is going to get to the point where it's going to start to boil over and explode. And just to give you an understanding, again, I've got in the description and in the chat here, I've got pinned the press briefing that went on for 3 hours that the press did not acknowledge, but coincidentally plastered all over mainstream media news, local news channels, is some extraterrestrial alien crash landing that supposedly happened in Las Vegas. How interesting. Isn't Las Vegas like right next to a bunch of secret bases in the Nevada desert? That's a very interesting coincidence. I also find it an interesting coincidence that happened weeks ago, and yet somehow it magically ended up on all of the news channels literally like 2 days before Dr. Greer's press club disclosure, where they had actual people from the military, all different ranks, all different parts of the military, and from the technological side of it, Raytheon, talking about exactly what was described in that reported alien interaction. What an interesting surprise, and yet none of them, I mean, you don't hear CNN, NBC, nobody is talking about this, this groundbreaking disclosure with, I think they had 16 people from the military, and they have, that's like 1/2 of 1% of all of the whistleblowers that he has, and he's interacting with Congress, but the news isn't talking about it. But you're not going to keep a lid on this thing much longer. It's just not going to happen. So the real question is, what is going to happen going forward? But I can't talk too much about that. I've talked about it before, and I actually got blocked on YouTube for a week. And so I have to, if I want to keep my YouTube channel, I got to put a lid on some of these things. But what we are going to talk about is open alien ET, human alien contact. So the first thing that I want to bring into your mind is, bear in mind, we are all this way, whether you're an ant or whether you're, whoever or whatever you are. You operate from within your own set of beliefs. And we're talking about not your conscious beliefs. We're talking about the beliefs that you have on a deep level, on a deeply unconscious level, and your assumptions. So you don't realize it, but you have probably millions, billions of assumptions, and most of them are probably accurate. For instance, if I have an assumption that this chair is going to hold me up. I have an assumption if I jump off the balcony, I'm going to go crashing to the ground. I have an assumption that if I take water and splash it on my face, I'm going to get wet. These are all assumptions. Most of them are true. But you have built-in assumptions about what reality is. And I can tell you from personal experience, having had my reality completely shattered over this past year. For me, that's saying a lot. I wasn't just some guy that wasn't interested or didn't have any experience with anything supernatural. I've been on the cutting edge, on the fringe edges of mysticism and spirituality, out-of-body experiences, interactions with gods and ancestors, myself doing qigong and high-level energy work, being able to actually bend the laws of physics and all kinds of things like that. But those were all happening within the third dimension. This is very important. Until you have an extra dimensional experience, and I'm talking about something even more than an out-of-body experience, something more than a lucid dream, something more than even what happens when people use entheogens. If you drink ayahuasca or do mushrooms, you will have an extra dimensional experience, but it will still be within the context of you were in a different state of mind. You will be able to put it into a folder of, yeah, man, I was high on mushrooms or whatever it was, but that's a whole different deal than actually being in your 3D conscious mind and having the walls of dimensions fall around you. That is a whole different experience. And this is the root of what I'm getting at. The majority of the comments that I had, the beliefs that I had, when I would think about what would it be like to interact if aliens existed, all of that musing was done within all of my assumptions and within all of my understanding within the third dimension, because you can't understand something you haven't experienced. That's just a fact. There's nothing wrong with that. So what we're dealing with here is we're dealing with human beings. The overwhelming majority of human beings have never experienced anything outside of the third dimension and don't even know how to think about it outside of the third dimension. So, one of my favorite videos that I recommend people watch is from Carl Sagan way back in the 70s. It's on YouTube. Just type in Carl Sagan Fourth Dimension or Carl Sagan Flatlanders, Flatland, something like that. And he talks about what it would be like if a third dimensional person were to interact with a two-dimensional being. And he talks about how the two-dimensional being not only would not be able to comprehend what was going on, but they would think they were losing their mind. And so all of the questions, whatever questions you have about extraterrestrials, aliens, interacting with them, whatever questions you have are going to be based on your experience. And so the majority of the questions that you have are going to be kind of immaterial. When I ask my ET friends questions, I got to say, I want to say like 50% of the time or something around there, they'll say, we want to tell you, but you wouldn't be able to comprehend it. You just wait. You won't be able to understand. So we need to understand that this is what's happening. Now, it is very important that you also understand that there is a difference between, I use the word aliens in the title, but that's just to get people's attention. But I make a definite distinction between extraterrestrials and aliens. And let's look at the words. The word alien means different. In fact, did you know that I believe one of the first terms for a psychologist, people that dealt with people who had mental illnesses, they were called alienists, because the person with the mental illness was so apart, so different from everybody's thinking. They were alien. So alien in its original term doesn't mean extraterrestrial. It means different, like completely apart from. I can't remember what the actual direct definition is. But, we talk about people who are from other countries as aliens, and it's an off-putting phrase, but aliens are real, but they're not extraterrestrials. Aliens are real, but they are not extra-dimensionals. Very important that you understand that. Oh, my bird friend is bringing me some food. There's a bird that I like to feed, and he's doing that thing. He's bringing me a bug. That's very nice of him. Anyway, I got distracted. So alien abductions do happen, and I want to make sure that people understand that. And there's two kinds of alien abductions that you'll hear about. One is actual abductions, people being abducted from their home, from their car, and or they have missing time. They see something in the sky and they have missing time as a result of it. That is an actual alien abduction experience. And they're almost always extremely traumatic, physically as well as emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise. They have many times they will have very, very traumatic physical responses, as if they've been damaged. So those are alien abductions, and those are real. They do happen. The other kind of alien abduction, unfortunately, has to do with people who have emotional and psychological issues, and they are delusional. There's a lot of people who are delusional, and there's actually a conflation between the two. There are people who are delusional and also have alien abduction experiences. But everything that I classify under alien abduction happens within the third dimension. It's very important that you understand that. So now go back and look at the Las Vegas alien crash landing. Let's just assume for argument's sake that it's real. Everything that is described happened within the third dimension. Now, strange things, paranormal things can happen within the third dimension. And people conflate strange, unknown paranormal experiences with higher dimensions. And that's not the case. I was an exorcist for years. I stopped doing it, and I explain why. If you want to go see it, you can look for it on my channel. I've got numerous videos about it. But demon possession is a paranormal thing, and it is absolutely a third dimensional experience. Demons are actually second dimensional beings that make their way into the third dimension. So when you start conflating frightening demonic type of experiences with what people do with alien abductions, because they feel the same. The level of malevolence that is felt, the deception that is felt, the physical abuse that is felt, taking over somebody's body. Demons do that in possession. Aliens do that. You can't move, and then they take you into their craft and they do experiments on you without your permission. These are all happening within the third dimension. And so whenever you hear about anything having to do with aliens or extraterrestrials, I want you to first put that filter in your mind and go, all right, so that's got some strange things in it, but it's happening in the third dimension. And if it's happening in the third dimension, for now, things are going to change later, but for now, if it's happening in the third dimension and there's a level of fear and violence and taking over, not respecting people's physical boundaries, you're dealing with an alien abduction scenario. And if you want to know what alien abductions really are, go watch Dr. Greer's Press Club disclosure video that I left a link for. I'm not going to talk about it because if I do, YouTube will get upset with me. So I'm not going to bother telling you what it is. But I'm here to tell you that alien abductions are not from extraterrestrials. And it's very important, if you've never experienced anything remotely associated with ETs, you need to understand that. And so what are extraterrestrials? And let's lay the groundwork for that. The word extraterrestrial means outside of Earth. So it is impossible for any extraterrestrial to travel to Earth without being from a higher dimension. The reason for that is because there aren't any habitable planets that are anywhere near close enough to us, even if they're traveling at the speed of light, which you can't even do in the third dimension. But even if you could travel the speed of light in the third dimension, you wouldn't be able to get to Earth fast enough. You would die in the process. So this idea that there are three-dimensional extraterrestrial beings that are coming to Earth from other galaxies and even other solar systems is impossible. So just from a scientific perspective, extraterrestrials must be able to function in higher dimensions. That thought, as it hits your brain, maybe makes sense. But if you've never experienced anything from a higher dimension, then you have no idea how incredibly exotic and strange the experience will be. You can't imagine it. I couldn't have. And it's the same as if you're talking to a two-dimensional being. They can't possibly understand up and down. They go, I don't know what that word means. Well, you know how you can see to the left and you can see to the right and you can see to the front and turn around and see to the back. You say, yeah, that's the everything that can be seen. No, there's this thing called up and down. I don't know what the hell that means. There's no such thing as up and down. What are you talking about? If you were to take a two-dimensional being and put them into the third dimension, it would be so mind-boggling, it might kill them. It might destroy them. They would feel like they were losing their mind. So that's how alien, if there's an alien aspect to it, it's the higher dimensionality of it. Now here's another assumption you must assume if you're going to make any progress in understanding what is the biggest block that is keeping ETs from having open contact with humans. And that is, you must understand that being in a dimension, whatever dimension it is, has to do with the vibrational aspect to it. So everything is, I'm forgetting the word I want to use. It's a frequency. The second dimension is a frequency. Third dimension is a frequency. Fourth dimension is time. We don't talk about that. People talk about moving into the fourth dimension. And you can use that word if you want, if it means to you moving up another level. But, we're already in the fourth dimension. We're moving through it. So the fifth dimension is a frequency. 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up till at least 11 dimensions. These are frequencies. Now, frequencies are also associated with states of mind, including emotions, intentions, desires. So what is going on brilliantly, the deception that is being so brilliantly and has been brilliantly given to people since I was born, basically, because that's when the first alien abduction happened, the Betty and Barney Hill, which is a whole other thing. Again, I can't talk about it because YouTube will block me. But the amazing deception about the whole idea of alien abductions is your uncritical acceptance of the possibility that aliens might be hostile. You just accept that. Not only do you accept that, but it is a natural third dimensional response to something you don't understand. Why is that? Because that's the way it is here in the third dimension. If you don't know what an animal is going to do, you don't know if it's going to bite you, you don't know if it's going to eat you, you don't know anything. You see a person, you're in the woods somewhere and you see somebody that dresses differently and is talking a different language, and you don't know what they're going to do. I mean, people kill you, shoot you, eat you, all kinds. You don't know. That is a third dimensional reality. So you're just projecting onto other dimensions what you understand, and why shouldn't you? But again, like that two-dimensional being, you don't understand. There are laws that cannot be broken. We get away with it here in the third dimension, but emotions are a frequency. So fear is a frequency, anger is a frequency, sadness is a frequency, as well as having a predatory mindset. Wanting to cause harm to somebody else is a frequency. Being a dead-eyed, psychopath with no emotions is a frequency. Now, these frequencies that function within the third dimension, it's a frequency. If you go into a different frequency, there are things that will be able to function there and things that won't. So until you understand that in the fifth dimension and higher, from a physics perspective, and we will learn this, because right now our science hasn't actually achieved higher dimensions, so they don't understand the emotional reality in higher dimensions. So scientists don't, and this is why we don't. And it's interesting, we've always projected onto aliens that they're dead-eyed psychopaths, that they're sociopaths, that they don't have any emotions, that they don't have any empathy. And again, that's an assumption. You don't know that. Unless you've been to a higher dimension, you don't know how any being can think, how they can feel. So I'm telling you, not only from a physics perspective, but from a personal, experiential perspective, once you get up in the fifth dimension, it is impossible to hold on to any feelings associated with what makes us afraid. You are incapable of holding on to anger, fear, self-pity, wanting to abuse, take advantage of somebody. It's just simply impossible. So if you can accept that assumption, either you can or you can't. If you can accept that assumption, then you can drop the fear. Now, there is something that does happen which can create fear within humans in the third dimension. And that is what you don't understand. Remember, the two-dimensional guy, if he's magically pulled out of his two-dimensional experience and he experiences up and down, he's going to flip out because he's never experienced that before. And the level of unknown and his two-dimensional brain trying to figure that out is going to cause him a lot of fear. So I'm not saying that interacting with a higher dimensional being won't create fear in you initially, because it might. But that is only because you're experiencing something you don't understand and you can't control. The first experience you have, if the higher dimensional being allows you to feel the electromagnetic frequency that they operate from, which they don't always do that. They have a good ability to, filter that out or tone that down. But if they allow you to feel it, I guarantee you your first experience is going to be frightening. But it will also be incredibly blissful. And here's the other thing. As I told you before, demons are two-dimensional beings. And when you experience a demon, you go, the level of rage and the level of malevolence is even beyond what we can imagine. It's because they live in the second dimension. And so they don't have the ability to even have empathy. In the third dimension, you can vibrate on a level of empathy. They don't have that ability down there. So what the two-dimensional being doesn't know, has never experienced empathy. They don't know what it feels like. If a two-dimensional being were to start to feel empathy for the first time, it would shock them and frighten them. And it's ironic because there's no need to be frightened of love and empathy unless you've never felt it before. Because these higher dimensional feelings, including love and empathy, they operate from a place of vulnerability. It is impossible to feel empathetic towards someone while simultaneously having a very strong resentment towards them. You can't have both. You can't be punching somebody in the face and at the same time having empathy for them. So, in other words, not having feelings like love, empathy, kindness, is actually what gives you the feeling of having control. And so when you experience a higher dimensional emotional mindset from an extraterrestrial, what you're going to feel is a level of love and a level of empathy that is beyond your human capacity to understand. And the resulting feeling will make you feel powerless and vulnerable, and it might cause you fright. But the one thing that will happen is all of your pain will come to the surface. All of the pain of being rejected, all of the pain of not being loved, not being seen, not being understood. When you feel the electromagnetic vibration from a higher dimensional being, and it makes contact with you, the first thing that will happen is all of your wounds will come to the surface, and you will realize you don't have control over them. You might break down into tears. You might have a lot of fear. But it's because of your inability to understand higher dimensional love. Anybody who has had interaction with a higher dimensional being has never been abducted, has never been physically assaulted, has never even been emotionally or psychologically criticized. And it's very important that you understand that. So the biggest block keeping human beings from interacting with, really the biggest block that's keeping higher dimensional beings from making open contact with us is that the collective consciousness of the world has not gotten to a place where it is ready and willing to accept it. So I want to read a question somebody left on the Jeff Mara podcast video that he invited me on, and somebody asked, I thought, a very good question. Let's see. Hopefully I didn't lose it. I can remember it though. The question that was given was, it was this person's understanding that these beings are millions of years ahead of us technologically. And the reason that they're not making open contact is because they're afraid of being hunted down and killed? Question mark. That's a good question. And that makes sense. There is some truth to that. The truth is, as is you'll see when you watch the disclosure video link that I've given you, what you'll see is that human beings actually have technology that are thousands of years ahead of what we experience. I mean, we already have the technology where we don't need ground vehicles, we don't need internal combustion engines, we don't need power plants, electrical, nuclear, coal, or water otherwise. We have the ability to communicate, without using these kinds of things. We already have all that stuff. We have anti-grav technology. We have the ability to travel between, wormholes and all those. We already have all that. Of course, we haven't been shown that. But the truth is that human beings do possess the ability to damage extraterrestrial vehicles and bring them down. In fact, as I understand it, virtually all of the downed alien crafts are because they were attacked by humans. So somebody's asking the question, basically, how is it that these beings who are so highly advanced, how is it that they're getting shot down? But I'm not an expert in that, but I do know that there are ways that they can get around that. I think it's also very challenging and difficult for them. So I would probably be inaccurate if I said that the threat of human violence is what's keeping them. If I didn't say that. So there is that there. But I also know from personal experience they can get around that in all kinds of ways. And they do have abilities to interact and travel and communicate that humans don't have any way of even comprehending. But that's not the reason, even though that is a factor. That's not the reason that there hasn't been open contact. The reason that there hasn't been open contact is because the average human, the vast majority of humans, would not be ready for it. Psychologically, emotionally, even spiritually, they wouldn't be ready for it. And it's because we live in this fishbowl called the third dimension. And it is a fishbowl with a one-way mirror. We can't see out, but other people can see in from higher dimensions. People in higher dimensions can see in, but we can't see out. And we can't imagine what we don't know. Not only can we not imagine what we don't know, we believe our survival depends on maintaining the integrity of the fishbowl. So if ETs were to show up en masse, even if there wasn't any, human weapons that could take them down, we would still block them out. We would still block them out with our perception. And if we weren't able to block them out with our perception, unless we understood things about higher dimensions and frequencies and all of that, the assumptions that I gave you, unless we have that understanding, the response from the average human being is going to be hostile. It's going to be, because even the existence of these beings destroys religion, completely destroys it. So once we do have open contact, it's going to be the end of organized religion as we know it. Most seriously, this will affect the Abrahamic religions, the monotheist religions. And there's a reason why we've had these monotheist religions for the past 2,000 years. It's for this very reason, because it is completely opposite of what is actually true. I was going to call it the third dimensional religion. The Abrahamic religions teach you that you are a tiny created being and that there is this all-powerful being called Jehovah who has control over you, your life, and demands that you obey him. And if you don't obey every single thing he says and does, you are in violation. You are a sinner. And he then has the right to put you into eternal punishment. And the assumption behind that is the assumption behind the average person's understanding of the third dimension. We live on this planet, there's this big empty universe. What? There's aliens out there? Your first thought is to assume that they're third dimensional, because how can you imagine anything beyond that? The fifth dimension and above is what anybody experiences when they have a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience, or when they have a spiritual vision, or when they have a visitation from an angel. All of those experiences are higher dimensional experiences. But it is filtered through a third dimensional assumption. This is why even, our ancestors, when they talked about, when people would die and go to the underworld, we assumed that they went to this nebulous place where they were just sort of floating around. That's because we can't comprehend anything above the third dimension. So from our perspective, anything that isn't in three-dimensional physical manifestation must be in sort of this nebulous, heaven is filled with clouds and angels and hell is filled with, but the third dimension is the only place where we have anything real. That's our experience. But the opposite is true. You are not a tiny little being that has been created and put on this planet. And you are not this tiny little being who is a victim of circumstance who must follow somebody else's rules in order to function. That it's the complete opposite. The truth of the matter is that you are the being who created this three-dimensional universe, and you continue to create it. You create it even if you're creating it from your ignorance, which is from within the third dimension. And you continue to create the third dimension because the thought of the third dimension not being there is equated to you as death. You can't imagine anything different from this than being dead. So your whole instinct is going to try and stop you from experiencing that. You're going to seek to corral and strengthen that third dimension so that you can continue to feel like you're alive. So we are the ones that are preventing open ET contact. And that's even with the acceptance that there are human beings who are have the ability to cause damage to extraterrestrials. And, you know, when they try and come into our dimensional space, that's when they become vulnerable. When they're in their higher dimensional space, I believe they become less and less vulnerable to human weapons. So that's why they come to you when, you know, this is again, if you've had an alien abduction experience, it's virtually guaranteed that what you experienced was a third dimensional hoax coming from humans. Very, very well created. We're talking with robots and with holograms. I mean, there's a video that somebody put up on Facebook, which there are holographic projectors that I was looking at this video of. There were whales in the sky, you know, around some building. It was an opening of some building in Dubai. And the whales were coming up out of the ocean, and it looked very real. And the whales were casting shadows on actual things. This is how elaborate the holograms are that human beings have. And some people have said that, you know, those big giant flying Vs, they're holograms. You can hear them, you can feel them, you can even smell them. So, you know, we have to wake up and we have to grow up. But the main thing here is to understand that in higher dimensions, no being could exist in a higher dimension and have anger, hatred, any kind of predatory instinct, deception. They cannot exist and have those things. So it is impossible for an extraterrestrial, because we've already established that any extraterrestrial being that is being able to make its way to Earth has to be in a higher dimension, because they would have to be able to travel interdimensionally to get here faster than the speed of light. So since we know that extraterrestrials, a true extraterrestrial, must be a higher dimensional being, we also know that these beings are incapable of any of the things that people are afraid of naturally and that have been portrayed falsely to you through the alien abduction hoax scenario. They can't do it. We haven't even got into they have zero interest in any of that. But one of the most frustrating things I run into, before I open it up for questions, one of the most frustrating things I run into when I'm, you know, trying to interact with, you know, other CE5 groups. I don't even bother with ufology groups, because that's the level of ignorance and conflation and fear is unpalatable to me. I can't even tolerate it. But it's made its way into the CE5 networks, and even there people leave all kinds of conflated, you know, questions and thoughts, and they clearly haven't, if they've experienced extraterrestrials, they haven't internalized it, and most of them probably haven't, but for some reason they're hanging out the CE5 groups. So I strongly urge everybody to do interdimensional meditation or CE5, and do it more than once. And you don't have to do it in a group. You can do it by yourself. You can use the app if you want, but truly the app is there for you. The ETs absolutely do not need anything on that app. They don't need the tones. They don't need anything to find you. You just have to have the intention to step out of your third dimensional experience and a desire to communicate with a higher dimensional being. That's it. If you have that, you will achieve success. It may take some time to get through your three-dimensional fishbowl, and you must give them permission. Again, completely opposite of the alien abduction scenario where they show up uninvited and break into your house and take you physically out through the walls up and, that never could happen. A higher dimensional being could never do that. Not only would they never want to, even if they did, they wouldn't be able to do that. It violates laws of physics. If you don't want to interact with a higher dimensional being, there's nothing they can do. You must give your permission. So all this fear is completely unnecessary. Anyway, I could rant and babble on, but I'll go ahead and stop. And I'm happy to open it up for questions. If you're new to the channel, the way this works is I only want to see your questions and your honest feelings. So if you have a question, you write the word question in all caps. And by the way, just in the chat, you don't have to do it in the comments. If you're watching this video after it's been uploaded, you don't have to do that in the comments. But in the chat, write the word question in all caps and then write your question. I want your question to be an honest question. Don't throw your opinion out in the form of a question. That's going to upset me. I tend to get annoyed with people that do that. And I also want to hear your feelings. So you can write the word feeling in all caps. Now, if you don't do that, I'm probably just going to scroll past it because if it's not a question or a feeling, I'm not interested. All right. And I am going to respond to this. Callie Lovebug said, I watched the Greer Fifth Kind movie on your recommendation. Guilt. He's trying to guilt me. The movie makers lied about President Trump. I don't even remember anything being said about President Trump. And even if they did, and even if I give you the benefit of the doubt, I'd like for you to tell me how many minutes they talked about President Trump, and then compare how many minutes they talked about President Trump with how many other minutes were left in the movie. So the fact that you held on to that tells me that this is what you're interested in. It's like saying, you're worried about, something very minor. It's saddening to me to see that you're so wrapped up in needing to buy into some victim mentality. I forced you to watch the movie and I misled you because, whatever. But no, I don't think what you said is accurate. And if it was, who cares? Let's remember who brought the jab. Let's remember who's triple vaxxed. Fill in the blank. In other words, just stop with the whole political thing. Conservative, Democrat, it's all a sham. It's all nonsense. And you're a fool if you believe any of them. All right, what else? Lightbringer question. After doing the whole breath, I laid down. As I was falling asleep, I heard a high-pitched air burst inside of my head. Is this normal? I don't know if it's normal, but what it tells me is that your meridians are opening up. So it's common to have experiences when you do energy work. The whole breath, in case you're new to the channel, you can go look this up. This is the basic meditation that I teach, and you can just Google that and you'll find all the videos of me teaching you how to do it. But it is a very powerful energy practice, and it opens up your meridians, it opens up your chakras, and when the meridians open up, there's all kinds of meridians in the head, you might have an experience of some kind. It doesn't mean anything. Whether it's normal or not isn't really the issue. That's just what happened to you as a result of your energy opening up. This is why it's good to have a teacher, because if you work physically with a teacher, when you do anything, they'll be able to, help you with that. But I'm glad you asked the question. All right. Okay, it's not a question. Agent of the Universe, honest feeling. I feel more and more like I'm dying to my control, and it feels like there's no peace or end in sight. And again, it's a feeling. I appreciate you sharing your feeling, because being able to verbalize it is what's going to be able to help you to move beyond it. And this is part of the third dimensional shift that has to happen. It's going to be, for some people, everybody's going to have a different experience. The shift is happening. It is coming. And for some, as their third dimensional reality begins to break down and expand, they will feel like they're losing control. They may feel like they're dying. They will have anxiety. By the way, we're about to go through a period that things might get a little more hectic in that regard, because Saturn is turning retrograde. So it means Saturn's going to go back and start digging up karma. So that means our karma as well. So our karma, negative karma, has to do with our negative thinking, our beliefs, things like that. So when those things start getting shaken up, we get uncomfortable. And so it's okay. But the good news, it's okay to have those feelings. They're just feelings. Nobody ever died from a feeling. And, stick with the actions that you know are true. Anyway, thank you for sharing your experience. Victoria, question. There is a YouTube channel that claims there is one type of gray alien that does not honor free will consent. Do you think this is possible? Haven't I answered this already? So I don't know when you asked that question. But, I've already answered that. And here's the thing, Victoria. This is a challenging way to interact with the world. It's challenging for me, but it's an ineffective way to interact with the world when your questions have to do with what somebody else said. Now, you didn't say I experienced. You said somebody else said. It means that you, Victoria, you don't even have an opinion to such a degree that you can't make a decision based on two different YouTube opinions. This is why you need to do the work yourself. Do CE5, do interdimensional meditation. That way you don't have to ask anybody anything. Because, I give you an answer. If you don't respect me, what difference does it make? I'm just another opinion out there. You already know my take on it. So why are you, elaborating on something I've already explained? It's impossible for ETs to have any kind of feeling that isn't filled with an even deeper empathy than you're capable of. Let me be clear. In higher dimensional beings, and I don't care what they look like. By the way, there are numerous beings that look like grays, that are different species from different planets. It's just, here's one thing, just to go off topic for a second. Here's one of the things that I've come to find out. There are beings that are cats, but they have 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, a mouth, and a nose, ears. But they look like cats. There are beings that, we're monkeys. I mean, from their perspective, we're monkeys. We're monkeys that used to go around on all fours, and now we walk around 2 legs, 2 arms. There's a lot of aliens that don't have this. They just have holes in the side of their head. They may look exactly like humans, but they have a hole in the side of their head. So the fact that somebody says there's a type of gray, it's just, again, I don't even know who this person is. They don't even have enough of a reputation that you tell me what their name is. So how do I know that how do you know that person even knows what they're talking about? It saddens me that people are so, they don't have any place to just, ground their feet. Anything anybody says is valid because they said it on YouTube. Anybody has an opinion is valid. So the fastest way to find that out is to do it for yourself. And what have you got to lose? I mean, I don't know anybody that's done CE5 that's ever had any negative experience beyond their own feelings. Anyway, it's frustrating to me when I hear those kinds of questions. I know you mean it sincerely, but it's just sad that we're in a state where people don't know what they should know and what they shouldn't know. They don't know what to believe and what not to believe. Let's move on. The Zeta connection. Well, what do you know about the Zeta connection? I mean, anyway, I already answered your question. I don't want to beat you up over it. I'm sure you're sincere in your question, but it's no. Who cares? Let's see. Where else was I? Timothy Zoll, honest feeling. I watched the Dr. Greer press conference live, and The Lost Decade, which is one of his newer movies, which I haven't seen yet. I'm sure it's very interesting. He says, I try not to let these things get to me, but it really made me mad. Time to double my efforts, the work. When the Dr. Greer's press conference, I was even blown away. I mean, I knew that there were unacknowledged programs that that used electromagnetic devices. I knew that they had holographic technology. I knew that they had anti-grav technology. I knew that they had robots and all that other stuff. What I didn't know is the extent of the psychopathic things that they're doing to fund themselves. I mean, when I heard about the things that were presented, I was blown away, and I had the same feeling as you. It was like, oh my God, this is real. This has to stop. This has to stop. And we have to, this information has to get out. So I'm in agreement with you there. Happy Earth Ventures, please write the word question in all caps, because I won't see it otherwise, and I will pass right by it. So that's for you. Do that so that I see your question, please. As an adult, I remembered being abducted by gray ETs. Was on their craft as they discussed how to destroy the Earth. I don't know what language they spoke or how I knew what they were saying. And I'm here to tell you that I don't know you. It's possible you imagined it, but it's also equally possible that you experienced that. And if, in fact, that was an actual experience, I'm here to tell you that they weren't extraterrestrials. They were humans, using all the things that I just said. And, the fact that they frightened you. So do you know why that is, Happy Earth Ventures? Do you understand why human beings have been doing that for at least 60 years? It's because they know. They've known for at least 100 years that these other civilizations exist, and that on these other civilizations, they have 0-point energy. So you need to understand that everything in our world right now is about control. Money does not exist. Find where money is. So you show me a coin or a piece of paper, but we know that's a symbol of something else. So show me the thing that money is a symbol of. You won't be able to find it. It used to be a symbol of gold, but even then gold was a symbol. You can't eat gold, you can't wipe your butt with it, you can't wear it. So it's a symbol of something else. What is that something else? It's an idea. People, we watch somebody build a house, for example, and we could ask, how much money does it cost to build that house? Now, our first knee-jerk thought about that, this is the three-dimensional mindset that must go away, is that we just assume that without money, that can't be done. But you think about it. The wood, somebody went out into the woods and cut down a tree and then took it into a factory and chopped it up. They used electricity or whatever to chop the tree up. So that costs what? Money. But everything that went into just even making the wood for the house can be done if we just decided to. As a group, if we just decided to do it and we stopped using money, we could still do everything we're doing now. Money is a symbol of control, nothing else. It serves no other function than to control you. So this is why the United States has gone on for so many years about being, the land of the free. But, where was the consummation of this empty thing called money? It was the United States. You go, even now, if you go to, if you're able to find, the still uncontacted tribes, there are still some in the Amazon, there's still some in New Guinea. If you find a tribe that hasn't had any contact with humans and you hand them, cash, they're going to go, I don't know what to do with this. Okay, I'll use it for fire starter. It doesn't mean anything to them because it doesn't have any real value. It doesn't have any real function. So this goes back to why have they been faking these alien abductions? Because if you knew 100 years ago that we could live with free energy, that we wouldn't have to pay somebody for our petroleum, pay somebody for our electricity, pay somebody for our natural gas, pay somebody for anything. If we knew that we didn't need to do that, the people who had all of the money and had all of those resources wouldn't have any way to control you. And so, in order to frighten you away from investigating, because we've had the ability to communicate with higher dimensional beings, since forever. Anybody that had the ability and the knowledge to go beyond the third dimension could communicate with them. You talk to the Vedic mystics going back thousands of years. If you talk to people that just even 50, 60 years ago were masters of Kriya Yoga, they could have told you, oh yeah, I've been interacting with extraterrestrials for years now. They are giving these false alien abductions so that you won't stop using money. Because if you knew you didn't need that the whole power structure would come down. That's why it's so insidious. And, these people are, MK Ultra, CIA, they are brilliant at psychological manipulation. They know what buttons to push to keep you afraid and to control you. So it all comes down to us waking up. If we can wake up, they will lose their control. And that, I think, is what's going to happen perhaps in the second half of this year. I don't wish anything. But, they're losing control of this, and they know it. So just keep your eyes open. Anyway, that's not a question. Happy Earth Ventures, a question is you have a question you want me to answer. You didn't ask a question. You told me this was your experience. So you still haven't told me what your question is. Vincent.thunderwizard.com, honest feeling, I'm feeling resistance doing the work. I find myself dissociating, I'm feeling grief. I understand. And I appreciate you having the bravery to be honest about that. And of course, you know the drill, you know what to do. Just keep acting toward, taking the actions you know you need to take. You know what those are. Happy Earth Ventures. Okay. And that's continued with the question, I guess. I don't know what language they spoke or how I knew what they were saying. Human beings have the ability to mimic telepathic communication, but it's done with technology. They can do that. What's interesting is that people like Linda Moulton Howe, I think she's passed away, and other ufologists who believe that they are honestly trying to expose to the world aliens exist have actually been the biggest mouthpieces for the deep state. I'm going to give you one example. She was talking about she had talked to some person in the military who was telling her, who was a whistleblower and was telling her about this thing which proved that aliens existed. And when you've interacted with ETs and you hear this, it's laughable. But it's not laughable to the average third dimensional human. So I'm going to share with you what I remember. What she said was, thinking that she's proving that this really happened. I talked to this guy. He was in the military and he told me this. According to her, there was some guy, I don't know if he was a private or a lieutenant or something like that, but he had been chosen by other people in the military in his unit to go and talk to an alien. And it's laughable now when you know that there are things that we use robots, that we use, not we, but that humans use robots, they use technology to mimic telepathic communication. So the superior officer tells the guy, he says, okay, so you're going to be scared, but what's going to happen is the alien is going to walk out of the ship until he gets, X amount of feet in front of you, and then he's going to telepathically give you some information. And your job is to stand. Your job is to stand there and to let him do this to you, right? And then he says, "Now it's going to look weird, but this alien is used to levitating, so he doesn't walk very well. So he's going to walk very strangely." Like, just because he's an alien and knows how to levitate, he doesn't know how to walk. He's going to walk very strangely up to you, and then he's going to telepathically send the message to you. It's going to knock you on your ass. It's going to knock you out, but will revive you. And so that's exactly what happened. According to her, according to him, out of this spaceship waddles out this ET that can't walk very well. And, he's supposedly trying not to frighten the guy by not levitating. And then he walks in front of him and then stands in front of him and then sends him this telepathic message, which knocks him flat on his ass, and he wakes up in the hospital later. And it was, the information was so much his brain couldn't handle it, and it knocked him out. Now, does that sound like a real ET experience? Does that sound like an experience with an extremely advanced civilization that has the ability to travel faster than the speed of light, that they can't walk, and even though they communicate telepathically with each other, they're incapable of communicating telepathically to you without being able to modulate it? Does that sound right to you? Well, if you've been brought up to be afraid of ETs, then you might believe it. But if you stop for a second and get out of a fear-based mindset, your thought process either goes, that's unbelievable, or if that were true, there's no way that that's how it would happen. But Linda Moulton Howe spent her whole life believing that she was exposing the secrets of the military, when in reality she was a dupe. She was an avenue of misinformation. She was an unknowing shill. And it is so obvious when you look at it. Just for a second, it is so obvious. Unless, you don't know any better, and if Happy Earth Ventures is right, you experienced it. You experience things that are out of your understanding. But again, everything you described is in the third dimension. It's a third dimensional experience. And ETs are far more interested in having a higher dimensional experience with you. Right now, especially. That may change later, but unless you've experienced it, you can't know that. And he says, this was in Brazil, 1971. Well, it's well known. If you look at Dr. Greer's films, you will find out that Brazil is one of the places that these experiments were going on. Unfortunately, you were a victim of an experimentation. But it's well known that they did that. They faked alien abductions in Brazil, and they're still doing it in ways I can't even talk about. But go watch the link I put up. You'll see it. And you'll hear people who have had your experience, Happy Earth Ventures, and they can tell you exactly where it came from and what was going on. And then that might be helpful to you to know. And he says, why me? You just happen to be there. That's why. Yes, they were in Brazil as well as the USA. They're all over the world. But you're not hearing about the things they're doing in other parts of the world. And you're not hearing about some of the really awful things that are happening, which I won't talk about. Let's see what else. That's not a question. Oh. This isn't a question either, but I'm going to respond to it. Sarah K. says, I was hoping Dr. Greer would discuss some of the intense emotional connection feeling of family members that some of us are lucky enough to keep experience during contact. I understand why he's not doing that, because that's not, that's my job. My job is to talk about exactly that, the intense emotional, mystical experience that comes from connecting with anything, in a higher dimension. His job is just to get the rank and file average third dimensional human to open up the understanding that our world is being taken over by people who are keeping from us all of the technology that we need in order to be free of poverty, free of hunger, free of disease, the destruction of the environment. He's trying to get that done. So he can't water down that message with my message, which is, this is a deeply personal, spiritually empowering thing. Then nobody's gonna take him seriously, and he won't accomplish what he needs to accomplish, which is first and foremost, people, the collective consciousness has to change. And that they're not going to, people are going to get angry when they find out, you mean I'm paying taxes for something I don't need to pay tax? You mean I'm paying however, hundreds, thousands of dollars for petroleum? You mean I'm paying for electricity and I don't need to, you mean that there's a cure for that? They need to hear that first. So that's why he's focusing on that. So I think it would be counterproductive for him to focus on the spiritual side of it when he's doing that, because that's not what's going to, most people don't want to go there. Most people don't want their mind blown, and, they don't want to experience unconditional love to that level. Most people don't want that or can't handle that. We have to, just give them what they can tolerate. What else? Shadow Dragon, question. Do lower dimensional beings that make their way here, as you stated, have the ability to influence humans to keep them from shifting to higher dimensions? Excellent question. So Shadow Dragon, I don't know if you're new to my channel or not, but I encourage you and anybody else who's interested in knowing what goes on during possessions, what demons are all about. Learn how, let's just say everybody should learn how to search within the channel. I put as many things as I can into playlists, but you should be able to know how to search. And the way to do that is when you go to somebody's channel, if it's on a computer, you scroll over to the little magnifying glass, you click on it, you type in whatever search word you want. I don't know what it is on your phone or your tablet, but there's a pull-down menu that will allow you to search. Type in demon possession, type in demons, type in anything you want, chakras, whatever. Now you're going to find older videos of me years ago before I had a lot of my awakening, but you can learn about that on my channel. But the short answer to your question is, they don't have the ability to do anything you don't let them do. So first and foremost, they can't even get into the third dimension unless a human lets them in. And in terms of their ability to influence you in any way, here's how it works. Like attracts like. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was telling me about this. He was extremely, extremely depressed one day. And he became really deeply depressed and was feeling suicidal. And all of a sudden he felt this energy enter the room, and he knew there was a demon in the room. And he could feel that the energy was moving towards him to merge with that energy. And he stopped and he said, I'm fine, go away, I'm okay. And what people don't understand, this is why you have to drop all the, even that question. I strongly encourage you to be willing to move beyond that question. People ask me when I talk about interacting with ETs, they go, what do you do to protect yourself? I say, I don't do anything to protect myself. Why would I need to do anything to protect myself? Because I know, I've been an exorcist. I know that the only way a demon can even see you on their radar is if you are vibrating on those levels. Anger, fear, suicidal thoughts, resentment, feeling violent, wanting to take advantage of people, all of those things, that is the lowest edge of basic human survival. You have to indulge in those feelings for a long time, and that will create a portal. And what ends up happening with people who end up becoming possessed is this. People who become possessed, every single one of them, from my experience, every single one of them has been deeply damaged psychologically. They've been physically, sexually, and/or psychologically abused. They've been, neglected, unloved, something, from very early age. And this damage, of course, creates tremendous self-hatred. This is the sad part about abuse. It creates an ongoing, self-abuse with the person. So that pain, the pain of experiencing the trauma that you originally went through, is so intolerable that you start creating all kinds of drama to distract yourself. This is why people get into abusive relationships. That's why they do a lot of drugs. That's why blah, blah, blah. They create a bunch of drama to distract them. But when that doesn't work, they need something even more distracting than that. And there's nothing more distracting to your feelings than being abused by a spiritual entity. And that sounds counterintuitive because, of course, they're miserable and they're complaining about how miserable they are. But the truth is that the pain that they're experiencing as a result of that demon attack is much less painful than the actual pain of the trauma itself. And, Sri M, Kriya Yoga Master, somebody asked him about demon possession, and I was so happy to hear that. I discovered that personally as an exorcist. But he said, I think it's more of a psychological thing. It was really refreshing to hear that. So, my question is, why are you even thinking about lower dimensional beings? I say that they make their way here. Well, they only get here because you invite them. So if you don't want to worry about that, then drop the fear, drop the victim mentality, drop the anger, drop the, take a look at all of your feelings, go to a therapist, find a counselor, find a spiritual teacher, find a mentor, do good things for other people, do things, do kind things for others, live the life of a happy, loving person. If you do that, you got nothing to worry about. Let's see. Sarah K., please write the word question in all caps. That way I can see it. That's the whole point. Normally if there's a bunch of comments, I'll scroll right through. Question: is this because the vibration we emit attracts thought forms? You're getting a little too intellectual here. Thought forms is a word. It doesn't matter if I use the word thought form, if I use the word demon, whether I say demons or thought forms. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's, I'm not interested in that. But the vibration you emit, again, it's about your emotions. It's about the emotions that you're investing in. Let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with having a negative feeling. You can be sad, you can be angry, you can be hurt, you can be lonely. It's when you indulge in those to such a degree, and you know, people feed off of their negative emotions. And by the way, let me give you the unconscious energetic contract. Because in order for a demon, and by the way, 98% of people who say they have demons don't. 2% do. But in order for a demon to have access to somebody, the unconscious contract is that the person has this deep wound that is so intolerable they may be completely unconscious. They're not even consciously aware of it. They're sending out a request, an energetic request to the universe. Please distract me from my pain. I can't handle it. Demons pick up on that, the same way sharks pick up on blood. And they come, and there is an agreement that is made. I gave you the example of my friend. My friend was conscious that there was a contract that was about to be made. And that's why he said, I'm fine, go away. He said no to the contract. The contract is the demon, this is the energetic contract. The demon says, I will distract you from your pain by abusing you. And in exchange, you're going to give me your life force energy. So there's always that interaction. If there wasn't life force energy, emotional energy, now by you indulging in your negative emotions, you create emotional energy. That is food for them. So if your emotions, you know, again, you don't have to worry about having negative emotions, but if you're taking actions towards at least working towards that higher emotional state of love, empathy, kindness, happiness, joy, self-love, then they don't want to eat that. They're not attracted to that. So they're not going to go chasing after happy people because happy people don't taste good. Only miserable people taste good. So that means you have to, you know, what I found out when I was after doing, I don't know how many, 10 or 15 exorcisms with almost all the things you see in the movie The Exorcist happening. I said, you know, after talking with them afterwards, I came to realize that these were people who, you know, no matter what I say, they're not going to get their life back together. They were always extremely screwed up. They were incredibly emotionally damaged, psychologically damaged, and they wouldn't even consider going to therapy or getting any kind of counseling. And then I'd say, you know, you're just going to end up where you were before. And sure enough, a few weeks later, they'd be right back where they were before. So I gave up and I said, what these people need is psychotherapy. They don't need exorcisms. What else? Shadow Dragon. Didn't I just tell you, Shadow Dragon? Oh, you did, actually. You did it right the first time. You forgot to do it this time. Question. I have been following you for years and watched those videos. All right, so you realize the longer your question is, the more intellectual it is, the more it's going to annoy me. You say, okay, so you're asking about lower dimensional beings. So it's not me I'm worried about. It is about helping others to shift to higher vibrations, which is hindered by the actual demons. So now you've just told me what I just told you isn't possible. And what's frustrating, Shadow Dragon, you've been on my channel for years, but you haven't learned how to listen. I just told you that what you just said is impossible. So why are you now explaining to me your inaccurate thought process that I've already told you won't work? It's because you're not listening. You're not absorbing it. You are representing the exact thing that you say you want to help others do. And let me just address the codependence here. It's not your job to fix other people. If you feel the need to think about, let me just break it down for you. Shadow Dragon, this is your projection. So do you know what projection is? Psychological projection. It's when you have a feeling that you either aren't willing to look at or aren't able to see within yourself, and you project it onto others. So this feeling that you have that other people are being prevented to achieve the shift because of demons, this is your experience. This is your fear. And so this is very codependent. You want to fix other people with their demon problems as though you have some kind of power to do that. They have to want to change. What makes you think you can give them the ability to want to change? You don't have that ability. This is an inside job, everybody. Lift people up. I mean, they can't. I'll share with you a Joe Dispenza story. My favorite one, I share it all the time, but it's very important. Joe Dispenza was teaching about how to access the pineal gland, which, by the way, if you want to do the 90-day challenge here, thunderwizard.com, subscribe to that. I've made it easier. Just click on where it says 90-day after you subscribe, where it says lightning qigong after you subscribe. But he was doing his own thing, and he was teaching people how to stimulate the pineal gland. And as he was doing it, he saw these beings, these higher dimensional beings, and he didn't know what to make of it, as I understand the way the story goes. And other people saw it, and he reached out to the beings, and he said, "Why don't you join us?" And they said, "We would love to, but we can't, because at the level that you're vibrating, if we were to come down to your level, it would be harmful to us. So why don't you lift yourself up? If you can shift up, just start making your way towards our vibration, we will meet you halfway." Higher dimensional beings can't give to you something you yourself don't want. And you can say you want it, but if internally you're indulging in fear, if you're indulging in extreme codependence, you feel you need to go fix other people because they're being attacked by demons and I'm going to be the one that's going to do it. Why don't you focus on you? Work on your codependence. Look at the pain within you that makes you feel you have to help others. Don't get me wrong, I feel for other people too. I get it. But this is an individual thing. You want to help other people? You do CE5. You do interdimensional meditation. You go to counseling. You meditate. You do the 90-day challenge. You know, the other day I was with some friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. And, you know, we had a schedule, and right at the end of that schedule, people were still talking, and I just abruptly left. I said, I have to go. And the reason why I went is because I had a very small window to get some surfing in before the surf was going to go dead for a couple weeks. And I hadn't been surfing in a couple weeks. Now, surfing is the one thing that gives me the greatest joy in my life. It's the greatest healing. It's the greatest medicine that I have. And so I, you know, unceremoniously just shut things off and took off, and I'm sure they didn't understand. But I take care of me first. It's not my job to fix any of you. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. But every time that I empower myself, your vibration goes up a little bit. Now you have to do something with that. And it's not just me. Anybody who takes care of themselves, who empowers themselves, who awakens themselves, it creates a higher frequency for other people to then wake up. So if you want to help other people, stop trying to figure out how to take care of them and worry about how to take care of you. You become conscious. This is why I spend, you know, as much time as I can in interdimensional meditation, because I know the longer that I spend out there interacting with them, meditating with them, empowering myself, the more power I'm giving other people, far more than I give every time I open my mouth. So we're going to have to learn that. Taking care of ourselves first is actually loving other people. What else? Nothing else. I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to leave it here today. So I didn't do my speech. This channel is about giving you practical tools. And again, we're living in a time where instead of trying to think our way into spirituality, which is what most people do nowadays, we need to take actual physical actions. And those actions will shift our vibration up. And that vibration will shift our thinking up. And we have this incredible set of spiritual technology, which is called the human body. And if you use breath, and if you use movement, if you use things like mantra, this will shift your vibration up. I am presenting on this channel free tools. You can go onto the YouTube channel page, look in the playlist for the Qigong, for the meditations, all of that. And if you're really serious about it, then we've got the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong, which you can subscribe to. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe whenever you want. I challenge everybody to go at least check that out. Courses.thunderwizard.com. All of my services, all of my teachings, all of my certifications, and my books. Here you see one of them here, Interdimensional Revolution. Go to michaelwilliamdenny.com. You see my name right there. Just put a .com, and you can look at my books. The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life will teach you everything you need to know. Interdimensional Revolution, to learn more about things that I can't talk about on YouTube. Extraterrestrials are coming to Earth. And there's a bunch of other books. Go check them out, michaelwilliamdenny.com. And of course, the interdimensional meditation. There are free interdimensional meditations you can do on the channel. You can do the higher level stuff here at the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong at thunderwizard.com. That's it for me, guys. I wish you all the best. As always, I love you enough that I tell you the truth, even if it's what you don't want to hear, because we have limited time. The clock is ticking. We've got a very short amount of time before everything is going to change. And so my job is to tell you the truth, even if you don't like it, in the hopes that you will find what you need. So if I've done or said anything that's been hurtful or offensive in any way, just know that it's coming from a place of wanting to help you the quickest and best way that I can. Thank you so much for showing up. I will see you guys all next time.